Hannah believed it would be just a weekend, maintaining the pretense that her friend Gustav was her fiancé, all to avoid the uncomfortable comments from her family. What started as an innocent lie, however, was taking an unexpected turn, leading to situations that Hannah could never have predicted. Hello, my friends. I am Linda, and this is Linda's Love Stories. I hope you enjoy this story. Hannah nervously adjusted her dress while observing the landscape passing by the car window. Her fingers drummed on her lap, betraying her growing anxiety. Beside her, Gustav drove calmly, occasionally casting worried glances in her direction. "Are you okay?" he asked gently, noticing her restlessness. Hannah forced a smile. "I'm fine. Just a bit nervous about this whole arrangement." Gustav nodded understandingly. He had known Hannah since university. Now their lives had taken different paths. Hannah had become a talented graphic designer, while Gustav had made a successful career as an entrepreneur. Their reunion, after years without much contact, had happened in an unexpected way. Hannah was desperate, urgently needing a fake fiancé for her cousin's wedding. Gustav, in turn, needed a companion for an important business event. The arrangement seemed perfect. He would pretend to be her fiancé at the wedding, and she would accompany him to the corporate event. But now, on their way to the hometown for the wedding, the reality of the situation was beginning to weigh on them. Hannah recalled the events of the previous week when she accompanied Gustav to the business dinner. The luxury hotel's ballroom was impeccably decorated. Men in expensive suits and women in elegant dresses circulated with champagne glasses. Hannah felt out of place, but Gustav guided her with confidence, his firm hand on her back. "Remember, you have been my fiancé for 6 months," he murmured. "We are madly in love." Hannah nervously laughed. "Of course, darling. How could I forget?" The evening went by without major issues. Hannah played her part with poise, charming Gustav's partners with invented stories about their romance. Gustav, in turn, seemed completely at ease, treating her with a tenderness that seemed too genuine to be faked. It was during a dance that something changed. With Gustav's hand on her waist and their bodies close, Hannah felt an unexpected shiver. Their eyes met, and for a moment, the world around them seemed to disappear. "You look beautiful tonight," Gustav whispered, his voice huskier than usual. Hannah blushed, her heart racing. "Thank you. You don't look too bad yourself." The moment passed, but it left Hannah confused. They were just friends, right? This was just an act. So why did her heart insist on beating faster every time Gustav smiled at her? Back in the present, Hannah sighed, watching the road stretching out ahead. The trip to her hometown was taking longer than expected. Heavy traffic and an unexpected detour had delayed them considerably. "I don't think we'll make it today," Gustav commented, frowning at the GPS. "It's getting late. Maybe we should look for a hotel to spend the night." Hannah nodded, secretly relieved to postpone the meeting with her family a little longer. They left the main road, entering a quiet little town. After a few unsuccessful attempts, they found a small hotel by the roadside. "Good evening," Gustav addressed the sleepy receptionist. "We would like 2 rooms, please." The man looked at them with regret. "I'm sorry, sir. We only have 1 room available, with a double bed." Hannah and Gustav exchanged hesitant glances. "Well," Hannah finally said, "I guess we'll have to make do." The room was simple but clean. A large bed took up most of the space, making Hannah gulp. Gustav placed the suitcases on the floor and turned to her with a reassuring smile. "I'll sleep on the floor," he offered. "Don't be silly," Hannah quickly responded. "The bed is big enough for both of us. We're adults, we can handle this." Later, lying side by side in the darkness, Hannah was painfully aware of Gustav's presence. The warmth of his body, the soft sound of his breathing. Everything seemed amplified in the quiet of the room. "Hannah?" Gustav's voice was low. "Are you awake?" "Yes," she replied, turning to face him. "I'm nervous about this weekend," he confessed. "What if your family doesn't like me?" Hannah smiled, touched by his concern. "They will love you, Gus. How could they not?" He returned the smile, his eyes shining in the dim light. For a moment, Hannah felt an almost irresistible urge to lean in and hug him. But the moment passed, and she turned away, trying to calm her racing heart. The next morning, they resumed the trip. The day was sunny, and the conversation flowed easily between them. Hannah found herself laughing at Gustav's silly jokes, feeling lighter than she had in a long time. Finally, they arrived in Hannah's hometown. The familiar streets brought back memories of her childhood and teenage years, including memories of Donnie, her ex-boyfriend, whom she hoped not to run into over the weekend. Hannah's parents' house was a flurry of activity. Cousins, uncles, and family friends were milling about, all busy with preparations for the wedding. Hannah introduced Gustav as her fiancé, watching with a mix of relief and guilt as her family immediately embraced him. "Oh, Hannah," her mother exclaimed, hugging her tightly. "I am so happy for you, dear. Gustav seems like a wonderful man." Hannah smiled, feeling a pang of remorse. "He is, Mum. He is amazing." The days leading up to the wedding were a mix of funny moments and tense situations. Hannah and Gustav had to improvise stories about their relationship, sometimes contradicting each other and having to discreetly correct one another. There was a moment when Aunt Marta asked about the marriage proposal, and both of them began to tell completely different versions. Or when Hannah's little cousin spilled juice on Gustav, staining his favourite shirt, and Hannah helped him clean it, their faces dangerously close. But the worst moment, without a doubt, was when Donnie, Hannah's ex-boyfriend, unexpectedly appeared at the family welcome party. Hannah was chatting excitedly with her cousin, the bride, when she saw him enter. Her heart stopped for a moment. Donnie looked exactly as she remembered. Tall, handsome, with that charming smile that had once made her fall hopelessly in love. "Hannah," he greeted her, approaching. "Long time no see." "Donnie," she replied, trying to maintain her composure. "I didn't know you were coming." "Your cousin invited me," he explained, his eyes never leaving hers. "I hope you don't mind." At that moment, Gustav appeared beside Hannah, placing a protective arm around her waist. "Hello," he said, extending a hand to Donnie. "I'm Gustav, Hannah's fiancé." The look of surprise and disappointment on Donnie's face was almost imperceptibly, but Hannah noticed it. "Congratulations," he said, forcing a smile. "Hannah, could we talk privately for a moment?" Hannah hesitated, looking at Gustav. He gently squeezed her waist, as if to say the decision was hers. "All right," she finally agreed. They stepped aside a bit, and Donnie began to speak low and fast. "Hannah, I know I made mistakes in the past, but I never stopped thinking about you. When I heard you were coming to the wedding, "Donnie, please," Hannah interrupted him. "That was a long time ago. I've moved on. I'm engaged now." He looked into her eyes, his expression intense. "Do you really love him? Or are you just trying to prove something?" The question caught her by surprise. She opened her mouth to answer, but the words didn't come out, because suddenly she wasn't sure of the answer. The rest of the night passed in a blur. Hannah found herself torn between the attention of Gustav, who played the role of a passionate fiancé perfectly, and the insistent looks from Donnie. Her head was spinning, full of doubts and confusing emotions. Later, alone with Gustav in the guest room, she finally broke down. "This was a mistake," she murmured, sitting on the edge of the bed. "I shouldn't have made up this lie. Now everything is complicated." Gustav knelt in front of her, taking her hands in his. "Hey, it's going to be all right. We're in this together, remember?" She looked at him, noticing for the first time the affection in his eyes. "Why did you agree to this, Gus? Why are you helping me?" He hesitated for a moment, as if carefully choosing his words. "Because you are important to me, Hannah. You always have been." Her heart raced. There was something in his voice, in the way he looked at her, that made Hannah wonder if perhaps, just perhaps, this was no longer just an act for him as well. The wedding day dawned sunny and bustling. The house was in an uproar, with people running back and forth, making the final preparations. Hannah helped her cousin get dressed, trying to ignore the knot in her stomach. During the ceremony, sitting next to Gustave in the church, Hannah found herself imagining what it would be like if it were her own wedding. She glanced sideways at Gustave, admiring his strong profile, the way his eyes sparkled when he smiled. He must have felt her gaze because he turned to her, taking her hand and squeezing it gently. At the reception, things started to get tense. Donnie seemed determined to talk to Hannah, appearing every time Gustave stepped away for a moment. On one of these occasions, he pulled her to a more secluded corner. "Hannah, I know I said I had moved on, but I can't let you get married without being sure this is what you really want," he said, his voice urgent. Hannah looked around nervously. "Donnie, please don't complicate things." "I still love you, Hannah," he declared. "Tell me you don't feel anything for me anymore and I will leave." Before Hannah could respond, Gustave appeared by her side. "Is everything all right here?" he asked, his voice calm but with a hint of tension. "Everything's great," Donnie replied, not taking his eyes off Hannah. "We were just reminiscing about the old days." Gustave looked from one to the other, his expression unreadable. Then, to Hannah's surprise, he turned to her and said softly, "This will not end the way you think." With those enigmatic words, he walked away, leaving Hannah confused and apprehensive. What did Gustave mean by that? Did he know something she didn't? The rest of the night passed in a whirlwind of dances, toasts, and conversations. Hannah found herself torn between her conflicting feelings for Gustave and the memories that Donnie evoked. She watched Gustave from afar, noticing how effortlessly he blended in with her family, how everyone seemed to adore him. And the more she observed him, the more she realized that her feelings for him were much deeper than she wanted to admit. When the party finally started to wind down, Hannah decided she needed some fresh air. She stepped out into the garden, taking a deep breath of the night air. To her surprise, she found Gustave sitting on a bench, gazing thoughtfully at the stars. "Hey," she said softly, sitting down next to him. "Is everything okay?" He turned to her, his eyes serious. "Hannah, I think we need to talk." Her heart raced. "About what?" Gustave took a deep breath before speaking. "I know this started as an arrangement, a lie to help each other, but for me, it's no longer just an act." Hannah held her breath, hardly daring to believe what she was hearing. "I fell in love with you, Hannah," he continued. "Actually, I think I've always been in love with you, ever since I met you at university. I just didn't have the courage to admit it." Tears began to form in Hannah's eyes. "Gus, I know Donnie is here," he gently interrupted her. "And I know you two have a history. If you still have feelings for him, I will understand. But I needed you to know how I feel." Hannah looked at Gustave, seeing all the sincerity and vulnerability in his eyes. And at that moment, all the doubts and confusions of the past few days dissipated. She knew exactly what she wanted. "Gus," she said, her voice choked with emotion, "I fell in love with you too. I think part of me always knew you were special, but I was afraid to admit it. Donnie is part of my past. You are my future." The smile that lit up Gustave's face was dazzling. He pulled her close, their lips meeting in a kiss that seemed to contain years of repressed feelings. When they parted, both laughing and crying at the same time, Hannah remembered Gustave's enigmatic words from earlier. "What did you mean when you said this wouldn't end as I expected?" Gustave smiled, caressing her face. "I knew you were confused, torn between the past and the present. But I also knew what we had was too real to be ignored. I hoped that in the end, you would choose us." Hannah kissed him again, her heart overflowing with happiness. What had started as a lie to save appearances had turned into the most beautiful truth of their lives. In the days that followed, Hannah and Gustav had to explain the truth to her family. To their surprise, after the initial shock, everyone found the story adorable and romantic. Months later, when Gustav knelt down and proposed to Hannah, this time for real, she didn't hesitate for a second to say yes. After all, sometimes the best love stories begin in unexpected ways. If you enjoyed, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment with a number from 1 to 5 to let us know how much you liked the story. Also, watch the video that is currently on your screen. See you soon.